because we get to introduce you guys to this place here. On many of the videos we have comments whereby people are asking questions about the place that we are in. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a tour of this place. Brothers and sisters, you guys can sit down and just try to make a walking space around so that we can walk all around the area. First off, people, they have mentioned the first thing that comes to, that attracts their eyesight when they're watching the videos or they notice the place here. They say, wow, there are a lot of paintings on the wall, a lot of pictures. Some people are also like semi-offended by that, or they say that how can this be a place of worship when you have images? And this is a direct reference to one of the commandments, actually, in Judaism that bases the foundation for Christianity in Judaism, where Moses, he goes and he meets God. And when he meets God, God gives him these 10 commandments that people have to abide by. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife, etc. And they go through the 10 commandments. Well, one of them was a specific commandment to not take or make any graven images. And there are groups of Jewish people who have interpreted this commandment to mean that you are not allowed to make any statues, idols, you can't make any paintings. And you also find this commandment seeping through into Islam because there are these narrations from the greatest Prophet Muhammad ﷺ where he forbids that anybody is to make any images of any creatures, animals, or human beings, or anything of the sort. All right? And there's other narrations that mention that some of the people that are tortured on the Day of Judgment are those who make images, and God brings them forward and tells them that they must blow into it. And if they're incapable of blowing life into it, then they're punished, etc., etc. And so some Muslims, especially like the more extremist fundamentalists, like the Wahhabi school of thought or the Salafi school of thought, will take this to be a direct commandment that it is haram to make any statues, it is haram to draw any images or to make any paintings. These same hadiths exist also in Shia Islam. And yet, what's interesting is that we find in these Shia majority countries such as Iran and in Iraq that it is a widespread phenomenon where you will find images on the streets and being sold, and images in the houses of Shia hung on the walls of Imam Ali alayhi salam, paintings of Karbala, paintings of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And when you go to their scholars and you ask, or you look into the questions that they have received of, okay, well, you have these narrations that are explicitly saying that it's haram to have these images, and yet at the same time you have these images. Well, how do you explain this? And the scholars will always say, the Shia scholars, that it is only haram to make an image, make an idol, paint a painting, if it is trying to portray the divine. So if you're painting the Lord of Lords, if you're trying to make a painting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who cannot be described, then this is haram. If you make an image or a statue or a photograph or a painting with the intention of worshiping that thing, like the Christians have, for example, images of Jesus Christ, And they consider this to be shirk because they know that the Christians worship the person of Jesus, and because this is an image of what the Christians would consider to be the deity, they consider that this form of imagery, this form of painting is what is haram, because the intention behind it is to pray to the portrait, to pray to the object that the portrait is trying to project, right? So it is that which is regarded as haram for most Muslims. Even Sunni Muslims, for the most part, they allow that children and people and artists, that they make images and they paint and they sculpt statues and things of this nature, because it is not being used for worship. So the same concept applies here. We too believe that it is impermissible and it is a great sin to make a statue or to draw a painting of the ultimate God, or to make a statue of a false God that you have the intention of worshiping. But because none of these images that you see here are portraying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and none of the people here worship any of the statues or any of the images on the wall, we consider that to be fine, that this is not polytheism, it's clearly not shirk. Is there anybody here that's worshiping any of the statues or the images on the wall? No. Good. Another further interesting point to prove that it is permissible to make statues and to draw images is the fact that you have a covenant prophet like Moses, who was the companion of the fourth covenant. He's the one who actually received the commandment to not make any images and to not make any statues. He is the same one whom we find later on being commanded to construct the Ark of the Covenant. And he's told explicitly to place on top of the Ark the two statues of the cherubim or the angels. So that commandment would have come into contradiction with the orders or the commands of God to make the statues on there. Also, in the Hebrew Bible and in the Jewish narrations, you'll find that the description of the Temple of Solomon included both images of angels and animals that were on the wall, that were there for decoration purposes, and also on the curtains that led to the holiest of holies. But also you had statues of these animals, lions and other creatures that were on the stairs that led up to the throne of Solomon. So clearly Solomon, who was a Jew, who abided by the fourth covenant, who kept the commandments of God, he did not understand this commandment that was given to Moses to mean that making art is totally forbidden. He didn't understand it in that way, but rather he understood it to be making images that are to be worshipped, like the Israelites did when they made the golden calf. Is that understood? Yes. Good. All right. So what do we have here now? We have here on the ceiling, if we could get just a few of the brothers to kind of lift this up and move it gently that way. This area, this room that we are in right now, we called it the Basilica of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. This place actually has two names. One is the Basilica of Imam al-Mahdi, and the reason why we chose to use the word basilica is because a basilica is a Latin word which was used, it means basically the great hall or the holy hall. And this area was a hallway in this building that lies underneath the dome that is on the top of the building. And in ancient times, the basilicas were used as public meeting places where people would gather and they would discuss the affairs of the community, and they would also discuss religion or have spiritual lessons. Philosophers would give spiritual lessons, philosophy lessons to the chosen in these basilicas. So that's how it started off, and basilicas eventually became places of worship, special churches that were given special status by the Pope. But that's the origin of it. And because this is a hallway that we use in a European country to gather, and that we learn and we talk and we discuss community affairs, one of the names that we've given it is the Basilica of Imam al-Mahdi. The second name that we have given this place is the Dome of Ahmed Masjid, or mosque. I don't like to use the word mosque because its origin came from when the Crusaders were wanting to mock the Muslims, and so they used to call them mosquitoes, and they used to call the place of worship for the Muslims that they referred to as mosquitoes as mosques. But rather, I call it a masjid because a masjid is a house of prostration. And because we believe that all of religion consists in us being in a state of prostration towards God through obedience to his vicegerent, this becomes a place of prostration, and it happens to have a great dome over the top of it, just like the Dome of the Rock. It's called the Dome of the Rock because there is a dome that is on top of the rock where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ ascended to heaven. Well, this is the Dome of Ahmed in honor of Ahmed al-Hassan the Yamani Masjid, a place of prostration that we gather and we worship it. We have here at the top a depiction of the first covenant. And we have Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he's in the Garden of Eden, and it is a reference to what we discussed in the Goal of the Wise, chapter 1, where we go over this idea that God had 7 covenants with mankind. And Imam Ali alayhi salam is standing in front of the tree of the forbidden fruit from the story of Adam and Eve. The tree represents Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, and we have a depiction of Adam alayhi salam, and he is now kicked out of the Garden of Eden because of his transgression, and we have Eve being carried away by the devil, and Adam is in a state of regret and in a state of turmoil because of what he did. Eve becomes seduced by the devil, and she's impregnated by him, and this is because there's many Gnostic texts and many narrations that have mentioned that this is the truth, the reality of what happened, and that Iblis is actually the father of Cain. We have a depiction here of her being pregnant, and then we have a scene of Cain murdering Abel. And that begins the story of mankind, where God banishes both Adam and the devil, and he no longer protects Adam from the devil. And basically the devil now and Adam, they're mixing together and they're sharing as the command was given in all things. As the verse in the Quran said, now they were banished from the garden, and they shared in their money and they shared in their seed. So Cain became a son of the devil through Eve, and Abel was a son of Adam. And Cain slew Abel. And then we have the next scene is a depiction of Cain, after being banished after his sin. He goes forward and he starts building the city of Enoch. Not Enoch the prophet, but Enoch, in earlier Enoch, Enoch the son of Cain. And this city, that's where the Canaanites, the children of Cain, they invented trade, and they invented gambling, and they invented all kinds of methods of deceit and ways that people would enrich themselves. It's also where people started inventing weapons and other ways, and they would go to war against one another, and specifically against the believers. And that led us up to the second covenant, and we have here a beautiful depiction of the second covenant, basically during the flood and Noah's Ark, and the believers being with Noah on the ark, as well as the animals, and yet the non-believers who refused to board the ark of Noah are drowning and falling down to the bottom of the sea. And then you have here Noah and his family being the only ones that survive after that. You have here a few prophets that come in between the second covenant and the third covenant. And we have here a depiction of the prophet Saleh and his camel. We have a depiction of Krishna and Arjuna, who were both two prophets that lived in India, in the Indian Pakistani region today. We have Zoroaster, who is also one of the 124,000 prophets that were sent to mankind. Then we have here a depiction of the third covenant, and there's three images. It's incomplete still. The artists are still working on these images, but we have an image of Abraham as he's smashing the idols. We have the Tower of Babel in the background. We have Abraham as he is being comforted by an angel as he's in the midst of the fire after being thrown in there and after condemnation by Nimrod. And we have a scene of Abraham submitting to God and willing to sacrifice his son, Ismail alayhi salam. We have here a depiction of the fourth covenant, and it is the covenant with Moses, and for that reason we have Moses speaking to God in the burning bush. And then we have some depictions of some prophets that came in between the fourth covenant and the fifth covenant. And so you have here Joshua, son of Nun, in the scene of Jericho. You have David and Solomon and Nathan at the height of the kingdom of Israel in Jerusalem. And then we have here the baptism of Jesus Christ at the hands of John the Baptist, who was a prophet that came right before the fifth covenant. Then we have here a scene of the Last Supper, and we have some scenes that take place before the sixth covenant. We have the scene of the crucifixion, and we also have a scene of Jesus and Mary Magdalene and his son, which is something which we discuss in the Goal of the Wise. And then we have here a portrait of the sixth covenant, and we have here the Kaaba, and we have the appointment of Imam Ali alayhi salam at Ghadir Khum, and we have the Prophet on the night journey as he stands before the veil, the green emerald veil. And we have at the center now of the first and the sixth covenant, Ahmed al-Hassan alayhi salam, whom the seventh covenant is named after, the Ahmadi covenant. He is the first and the last, the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega, as we would say in this story of the covenants. He's Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in his return, and he plays a very significant and important role in our religion. The second layer here of images that we have underneath the covenants are the images of the returned believers, the returned prophets and messengers, because a core part of our belief is that in the time of the Qa'im, the believers who believed in him and wanted to support him and wanted to play a role in the establishment of a divine just state, they are resurrected from the grave, they reincarnate, they return in a raja. So the raja is this concept that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam said that whoever doesn't believe in our raja is not from us. And they described the Raja as being the return of the best, all the saints, all the prophets, all the messengers, all the righteous people, and a return of the worst, all of the worst demons and tyrants and evil ones and the enemies of the prophets and the messengers. They all return for one final epic battle that takes place in the time of the Qa'im, where good banishes and overcomes evil, and all those who were martyred by the evil ones get to exact revenge against them. And it becomes the time where Iblis is actually finally slaughtered and the earth is rid of him, and the balance returns back from the hands of evil to the hands of good. And just as the earth was filled with injustice and tyranny in that time, the prophets, the messengers, the saints, they all are victorious, and they manage to fill the earth up with justice and equity as it has been filled before with injustice. And so we have here depictions, paintings of the people that are believers in this very call. They have returned, and they are prophets and messengers who chose to come back in this day and age, and they discovered themselves, and they were informed of their incarnations, or remembered who they were in this call. And so you have images here of Zechariah and Joshua and Bathsheba and some of the other famous people that have existed over history. The second layer is a continuation of that. We have here a depiction of these 4 buildings, and they represent the history of our community. This building here is the building of Badr that was with us in Egypt. And that's where our community first formed, and that is where we lived at when we received the glad tidings of the death of King Abdullah, and where we were when basically we had glad tidings of the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. And that is where the community started. And then we migrated to the second image there, and that is our first place of worship, our first masjid that existed in all of Europe. And it was in a beautiful town called Kropach, Germany. And the believers would gather over there. And then we migrated, and we had a city, and the Imam called the city Yanbu' al-Islam, the fountain or the origin of Islam, the source of Islam, or the source of submission. And that was the city that we had in Hällefors, or Sävsjön, right? Sweden. And then we have a depiction of the current headquarters for all of Europe for the Dawah, the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, and that is in the United Kingdom, and that is this place here right now. And now we have inside of here a couple of items. We have here the Ark of the Covenant. It is not the original Ark of the Covenant, but it's one that we constructed here for a particular purpose. And we have on top of the Ark, we have 2 cherubim. Now, in the original design of the Ark of the Covenant, the one that Moses had, the wings of the cherubim were aimed towards one another, and they were actually covering the seat of mercy, or the location, the throne in the middle, whereby God spoke from behind those wings to the Israelites and to Moses and the prophets that, the chosen prophets that spoke to God after that. And that symbolized that in those times God was worshipped in secret. he was hidden. The narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad state that in the time of the Qa'im, God is worshipped openly. All things that were hidden are revealed. The 27 letters of knowledge that were kept secret from the time of Adam all the way till now, everything comes to light and everything comes into the open. And for that reason, you have the angels now with their wings backwards, and we reveal on there two thrones that are on top of one another. One throne that represents the kingdom of earth, another one represents the kingdom of heaven, because we believe that God is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. He rules above and he rules below. Just like in the Bible, when Jesus appoints to Simon Peter, he tells him, hey, I give you the keys to the kingdoms of the heaven and the kingdoms of the earth, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. So the Imam who rules, he rules by God's rule. God places his will inside of the heart of the Imam, and whatever the Imam does on earth matches what is to be done on heaven, and by that God's rule is established on earth as it is in heaven above. And so the key, the core, the center of our whole religion is to enable the Jesus of our time, to enable the Muhammad of our time, to enable the Adam, the Moses of our time, to take them as our king, as our Pope, as our Dalai Lama, as our Imam, as our Mahdi, our guide. And that is what the religion is about. The Ark of the Covenant is at the center because it was meant to demonstrate the fact that this used to be the house of the Almighty, the house of God. And the Muslims also have a house of God, just like the Jews did with the Ark of the Covenant. And the house of God is also a square-shaped or cube-shaped, and it is the Kaaba that they call the house of God, the Bayt of Allah. And in reality, these are all allegories, they're references, they're reminders, they're symbols to the fact that the true house of God is the Caliph of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the Adam of the time, and when God created Adam, he created him to be his house. And there's even narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that state that there is nothing on the earth. There's no temple, there's no mosque, there's no house, there's no synagogue that can contain the Spirit of God. His only house, the only house that can contain him, is the heart of mankind. And for that reason, God dwelt, his spirit was blown into the heart of Adam and the heart of the successors of Adam in every day and age. And the pilgrimage that we are to make in reality is a pilgrimage to the Caliph of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we were taught this as a symbol that we're supposed to migrate to the Kaaba, but in reality what was meant by that was to migrate to the Caliph of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a topic which we will go over, inshallah, an entire lecture by itself. And so the house of God, the Kaaba, or the Ark of the Covenant, is really the Caliph of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is supposed to sit on the throne of the earth, and he is the voice of God that speaks to Moses and that speaks to mankind in every day and age. And it's interesting too, because you have this depiction of the throne that's there in between these two angels, and you also have narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that state that when the Qa'im emerges, he will have two angels to his left and to his right, one to his left, one to his right. Gabriel on his right and Michael to his left. And that is in a reference to this scene that you see also at the top of the Ark of the Covenant. On the sides of the Ark of the Covenant, you have the seal of the Dawah, and the seal of Ahmed al-Hassan alayhi salam, and the seal of the Mahdis, and it says on there, Huwa Allah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim al-Wahid al-Qahar. He is Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, the one, the conqueror. And then it says on there, at the top of the Star of David, Muhammad, then Ali, then Al-Hassan, and then you have Al-Fatima on the other side, and you have Al-Hussein, and at the bottom you had Al-Qa'im, who is Abdullah, and you have at the center of it, Ahmed al-Hassan, as a sun that is shining, and it has 15 rays on there, each ray representing one of the infallibles until Ahmed al-Hassan alayhi salam. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام والمهدي وسلم تسليما. At the front of the basilica here, we have the member, and the member or the platform is where the Imam gives his speeches. And it is, it consists of several layers here. And because it is also in a six-pointed shape here, or star shape, you have written on the bottom of it, Huwa Allah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim al-Wahid al-Qahar, on all sides of the member, and then on all sides of the member at the bottom here you have the same names that were on the seal in their exact places, which was Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, and the Qa'im. And then you have above each and every one of them, you have a hand, and the hand symbolizes, you have 5 hands that symbolize the members of the Ahl al-Kisa alayhim salam. All of them are right hands because they're the hands of Muhammad, Ali, and Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, and you have one left hand that represents Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam. And then you have on the member here, in Arabic, it is written the will of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he gave to Imam Ali, dictated to him on the night of his passing. And you have on the other side, it's in English. On this side, it is in Arabic. And basically, this will is super important, and it's core to our entire religion, because we believe that it is the determining factor. It is what allows us to be sure and to know that we're on the right path and not on the wrong path. That we are following a true claimant and we're not following a false claimant. That we are the people who kept the covenant versus the people who abandoned the covenant. Because the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, they were very explicit about the fact that from the time of Adam, Adam wrote secretly in a will the names of his successors, and he gave it to the believers. And every year they would open up that will of Adam and they would read the names of the successors in anticipation for the arrival of the Savior Noah. And that same sunnah, the sunnah of Allah that never changes, it continued and carried on from one prophet to another, with every prophet naming his successors and his vicegerents that came after him. And just like the Muslims believe, or the Sunni Muslims believe, that Abu Bakr and Umar were so smart because and wise because they named their successors that were to come after them, the Holy Prophet Muhammad would have never passed away without leaving a will whereby he names the successors to his nation. And that is exactly what we follow, the will that's written in the books of the Muslims, the only will that names in there the names of the successors of the Prophet Muhammad from his time all the way down to our current time. And in there, he mentions Imam Ali as his direct successor, followed by Imam al-Hassan, followed by Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, followed by Ali Zayn al-Abidin, followed by Muhammad al-Baqir, followed by Ja'far al-Sadiq, followed by Musa Kazim, and then Ali al-Rida, and then Muhammad al-Jawad, and then Ali al-Hadi, and then Hassan al-Askari, until we came to the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, the Imam of the time. And then it says that after that, it goes to his successor, and then it names the names of the first three successors of the 12th Imam, the first three Mahdis, and those are Abdullah, Ahmad, and the third name is Al-Mahdi. And those are the companions of the will. Ahmad al-Hassan alayhi salam, Muhammad, the 12th Imam, is Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. Ahmad is Ahmad al-Hassan the Yamani, and he is the one whom we honor here at the center of our basilica, and the one who we named this place after. And Abdullah, who is myself, I've claimed the will. And so this document that we keep here is the document of authority. It is the letter of appointment that no believer can reject, and nobody can claim is false, because the Prophet gave a promise on his deathbed. He said, "Let me write down that which, if I give to you, and you hold on to, you will never go astray." So the idea is that if the Prophet was truly a prophet, if his promises are true, then you can never be misguided if you hold on to the names and the claimants of the will of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the power of the document. That is the power of the testament of the will of the Prophet Muhammad. And that is the power of this da'wah, because there has never been a claimant in the entire history of Islam who has ever claimed to be appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and has managed to show the people any document where their name is mentioned as being appointed on the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad. No other da'wah but this da'wah. And so it follows the sunnah of all the prophets that came before. Just like Jesus said, just like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that in the Quran, when he told the people that he was foretold by the Prophet Jesus, مُبَشِّرًا بِرَسُولٍ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِهِ اسْمُهُ أَحْمَدٌ, and giving glad tidings of a messenger to come after him whose name is Ahmad. Prophet Muhammad said that Jesus foretold my coming. Prophet Muhammad said that his name was mentioned in the Torah. Jesus said his name was mentioned by the Prophet Isaiah, and he quotes the verse. Jesus also mentions that other prophets and messengers had foretold of his coming and mentioned him in their will, most famously the Prophet Moses in his last testament. And as such, the Prophet Muhammad left a list of his successors that Ahmad al-Hassan and myself claim to be from. I hope that you enjoyed the tour, and thank you for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.